Donald Trump has, of course, promised to cut energy prices by half as the centerpiece of his policy to combat inflation across the board. And the refrain that we heard in Milwaukee, much like it was in the Twin Cities in 2008, was drill, baby, drill. Now, on the other end of these promises, at least in some cases, is the governor of Alaska. And I'm glad to say that he's in Washington today. He came here to warm up in our 25-degree weather. Governor Mike Dunleavy, it's great to see you in the nation's capital. Welcome back.
Great to be here on a summer
Bloomberg
day.
TV and radio. On a summer day with, I think it was 27. I'll be fair here. I want to know what your state is going to look like a year or 4 from now, knowing that Donald Trump has talked a lot about not only unwinding regulations, but unwinding limits on drilling in your state, specifically in ANWR. How quickly will you get to this, and what changes in the offing?
Yeah, it's a great question, Joe. So it depends on the executive orders. Some have said that the president's going to drop executive orders immediately, maybe even on the first day. Mm-hmm. Hopefully some of those executive orders will repeal what some of the Biden administration folks have done to Alaska. Our Senator Dan Sullivan has an interesting chart that shows about 66 sanctions against Alaska, is what we call them, since the Biden administration came into play. So, for example, in 2017, ANWR was open under the Tax and Jobs Bill. Mm-hmm. And the Biden administration has really done everything they can to stop those leases from actually going into play. We're supposed to have a sale again, a second sale for leases in ANWR in December. Mm-hmm. We're not sure if that's even going to happen. This is required by law, but we'll see when December comes along. But we're questioning whether this administration is going to go through with that. Mm-hmm. But I would say what Alaska is going to look like is what it's supposed to look like. What this country is supposed to look like is tremendous opportunity under the Trump administration, just like his first term. Great conversations with the president. During his first term, he always asked us, what does Alaska need?
Yeah.
What can we do for Alaska? And under President Trump, we got ANWR. We were drilling more. We were moving west in the NPRA, which is the National Petroleum Reserve, about 27 million acres of land in Alaska that was designated solely for oil production and gas production. Very supportive he is of our gas line project that is fully permitted that we're trying to finalize. Timber industry. Our timber industry disappeared in the Tongass National Forest under the Clinton administration. Hopefully that comes back. But between oil, gas, mining, timber, we have tremendous opportunity in Alaska. All we want is the opportunity to be able to develop those resources on federal land. And we're very hopeful with President Trump coming back.
You mentioned the leases under the Biden administration. 7 of them that had been acquired by the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority were canceled, and 2 others were abandoned as a result. You're in an interesting position here as a policymaker with one hand on Washington, the other on industry. There's been a bit of a Lucy with the football, according to some oil producers, who want assurances before they start investing in these leases. What would you tell them?
Well, that's another thing that the Trump administration will bring is certainty. So part of the problem with the leases in ANWR, as you mentioned, is when you're selling leases, but on the other hand, you're telling folks to not invest in the Arctic, to not put money in the Arctic, to not put money into oil, it provides an uncertain future for those investors. And so I think under the Trump administration, that's going to change. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's very important to realize is we're going to need 2 to 3 times as much energy as we're producing right now because of data farms, supercomputers. That's rapidly changing. A gigawatt of electricity powers about 800,000 homes. We only have 700,000 people in the state of Alaska. So some of these data farms are using more than the power we generate for all of our residents. You're going to have as much energy as possible coming from various sources, and we're going to need it sooner than later.
You're sitting on oil, but a lot of people are talking about nuclear now. Do you support that?
Yeah, we support all forms of energy. Doesn't matter if it's renewables, oil, gas, nukes, any and all forms of energy. And we actually passed a nuke siting bill 2 years ago that's going to make it easier for nuclear outfits to come up and take a look at Alaska.
Is that right? So Alaska could be the home of the next new nuclear reactor in the United States?
Well, I hope so. And we're also looking at a nuclear reactor on one of our military bases at Eielson. So, yes, we hope so. You need as much energy as possible, again, from any source we can get it from.
Or will we see an auction in the early stages of the Trump administration when it comes to these leases?
I hope
or
so.
do you not have a sense exactly what that procedure will be?
I hope so, and I hope that also pertains to offshore oil leases, which were also negatively impacted by the Biden administration. So onshore, offshore, again, we hope that there's a couple lease sales that go up pretty quick.
The prize for you, unless you tell me otherwise, is a pipeline, a natural gas pipeline that the Trump administration has promised. You actually retweeted a statement by Donald Trump on this. What's your expectation? What has he told you?
Well, we have all the permits for this pipeline. It's a massive pipeline project where I think we're battling our last court case. So this pipeline project is really coming together with buyers and sellers of gas. The president's been very consistent. President Trump's been very consistent. And he supports this gas line concept. What people don't realize is Alaska pioneered LNG export for North America. In the late 1960s, 68, 69, we sent gas to Japan, LNG, out of Nikiski, Alaska, which is south of Anchorage. Yeah. That occurred for 50 years until our gas got depleted in the Cook Inlet. But we're talking about North Slope gas, which is 100 trillion cubic feet to 200 trillion cubic feet of gas, tremendous amounts of gas. But we're very close to consummating this gas pipeline, and pretty excited about it.
Will Chris Wright and Doug Burgum help you make that happen?
Well, I know Doug. Doug's a former governor.
Sure is.
Comes from a energy state.
Yeah.
I think I don't know Mr. Wright well, but from what I understand, he's going to do a great job as well. But Doug is going to be terrific because it's that interface between technology, supercomputing, and energy. And his role as the energy czar, I think, is going to pay amazing dividends for this country.
Energy czar, but also the Interior Secretary might have something to say about the lands we're talking about.
Yeah, we have more BLM lands, more park lands than any other state in the country in terms of acreage. Our population has more Native Americans than any other state as a percentage. 20% of our population is Native American. And so a lot to do with the Department of Interior Alaska has. And so we look forward to working with Doug on solving some problems for the state and the country.
The biggest tribe in Alaska supports your move on energy.
Most Native Alaskans, most Alaskans support our moves on energy.
This is something that's been mischaracterized
Absolutely.
in the media. How come?
Because it doesn't play to the narrative on the left. My wife is Inupiaq Eskimo. My kids are Eskimo. They're tribal members and they're members of our native corporations up there. My 3 girls work at the largest lead zinc mine in the world. It's a resource extraction industry. Most Native Americans, they're Americans. They want to be able to turn their lights on. They want to be able to warm their homes. They want to be able to drive their machines, their cars, their snow machines, whatever it is. And so, yeah, energy is important to all of us.
They also want to drink clean water and breathe clean air. Do you worry about the impact on climate change that, for instance, the LNG exports? Because lifting that moratorium looks like a day one endeavor for Donald Trump.
Boy, I hope so. And I don't, because Alaska takes care of its environment probably better than any other place in the country, any other place in the world, and probably any other place in the country. When you shift your resource development overseas to places like China, places in Africa, the Middle East, they don't have the environmental regulations that we do. And so by doing it here in America, you get the benefits of taking care of the environment, jobs, wealth creation, and really opportunity. And this energy is really going to be the underpinnings for the supercomputing age, the AI age that we need to be leaders in.
You've got your eyes on data center, don't you?
Absolutely.
That's a big deal for Alaska? Or does the distance make it difficult to put the data centers themselves in Alaska? Or is it about procuring energy in Alaska that will feed the data centers here?
Well, what we have going for us in Alaska is energy.
Yeah.
We have continuous acres of land. You need large tracts of land.
Sure.
We have that. We have 3 times the fresh water of any other state.
So set up the farms in Alaska.
And we have cool temperatures. Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Cooling is a big part of this.
Huge.
That's fascinating.
Huge.
I want to talk about you, Governor, in your personal trajectory, because a lot of people are watching us right now. Joe's talking to the governor of Alaska. He's this big timberman-looking guy with some logging. You're from Scranton, Pennsylvania. And after you graduated from college, after spending a life hunting and fishing and being outdoors, you decided to just move your life to Alaska. Through a connection, you got a job as a logger.
Yes.
As a kid from Scranton, which more people associate with Joe Biden than with Mike Dunleavy. What was the scratch or the itch you were trying to scratch by making that move?
Always loved the outdoors and the ultimate outdoor.
Was it culture shock when you got there?
Not really. Great people in Alaska, just like great people in Scranton. So not really, but it was the outdoors, the wilderness that drew me there back in 1983. So right out of college, went to Alaska and never looked back.
Never looked back?
Never looked back.
How much time did you spend logging?
Well, that was for several months.
What did you learn doing that?
Several months in Southeast Alaska. Then I moved up north, close to the Arctic Circle, and I was a teacher for over 22 years.
You were a teacher for a long time before you got into politics. Yes. What did you learn as a logger from Scranton, Pennsylvania?
That jobs are incredibly important, especially for low-income folks. Opportunity is very important. And resource development is what Alaska is all about. That's why the U.S. acquired Alaska from Russia, was resource development. And again, we do it better than anywhere else, I think, in the world.
You then became a teacher.
Yes.
Do you think that Donald Trump is on the right track to eliminate the Department of Education as an educator yourself?
I do, because education was one of those rights that the states never gave up in the Constitution when we formed the federal government, because the states believed that their control over education was critically important, not the federal government's control. And so the Department of Education is a new department, came in under Jimmy Carter. And a number of us that were teachers, administrators, school board members, which I was as well, we think you can do things better at the local level than you can thousands of miles away from Alaska or thousands of miles away from other states. And so certainly support the elimination, if possible, of the Department of Education.
What do you do for funding for disabled students? Some of the other expenses that might be hard for a state to carry.
You run that money through health social services.
Yeah.
There's many ways to get money to certain groups in the educational umbrella. It doesn't have to be through this department that currently exists.
A lot of people suggested you for a number of jobs here in Washington.
I heard that.
Yeah, you might have as well. You're here right now. I don't know who you're talking to. Would you consider working for this administration? Maybe you should run the Department of Education.
Well, I think he's already got a great pick in Linda McMahon for education. But the president and I never talked about a job. He knows that I have 2 years left in my term. I thoroughly enjoy this job, and as mentioned earlier, we're on the verge of some big projects that we want to make sure get across the finish line. So I've got my hands filled over the next 2 years with Alaska, and I look forward to it.
A lot of governors, though, say that the stock answer is, oh my God, Washington, nothing gets done there. I'm better off here. I'm an executive running my own state right where I want to be.
There's truth to that, too.
Is there truth to that? Does anything get done in Washington with Donald Trump at the other end of Pennsylvania?
I think with President Trump, he really wants to change things. He really wants to disrupt things. And I say that in the positive. He really wants to give power back to the states, give power back to the people. So I'm excited about the possibilities. I saw what he did his first term, and he's had 4 years to plan for this term. I think it's going to be a great 4 years for this country.
Can he really drop energy prices by 50%?
If we produce more.
Yeah.
If we produce more.
That's what we're talking about.
Yes. And for Alaska, what we want to have is more production, not necessarily higher prices, because higher prices hurt Americans, hurt Alaskans, but more production. That's where we'll get revenue from as well, more production.
Nice to see you in town.
Yeah,
Come see us again. The governor of Alaska,
Mike
Dunleavy. Now you know where he's from.